Guru Nation? We are live on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And I think right now we'll be live on Instagram too. So this is a very special live stream. We've been working, myself, Ronik, Alexis, with Patient Ace, especially Ronik and Alexis. They've been onboarding new sites, giving sites crash courses on how to recruit, best practices, including my own site. Our staff get onboarded and are taught, best practices. We're always looking to make things more efficient when it comes to Patient Ace, which means cheaper, faster, better in theory. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to discuss some of the things we've learned already from sites. What sites are doing well, what sites can do better. Even sites that are not using Patient Ace, I think the similarities are there and the themes are there, regardless of which portal you're using. And there's a lot of portals, but we think ours has unique advantages due to the cost effectiveness and some of the automations that we're rolling in. But thank you guys for jumping on.
Yeah, glad to be here.
For having us.
So, how's the now that Patient Ace is like maturing and rolling out new products? We have our own app now with the logo. We had an app before without the logo. Now it's with the logo. We have AI doing all kinds of stuff. Ronik, you're going to be on a panel at SOS. I didn't even tell you.
Oh, great.
We haven't even released the panels yet, but one of them is about AI. Obviously, we have recruiting panels, but one of them is about using AI and the legalities around that. And so you're on that one because you
Okay.
kind of have both. You have the vendor. Patient Ace is interesting because sometimes our clients are the sponsor, and sometimes our clients, like the majority of the time, the clients are the sites. So you have like both perspectives, and so that will be definitely a topic that comes up. And we're still learning a lot between now and then, and AI is evolving. But how has startup life been for you guys?
Yeah, I mean it's been an awesome journey. Just kind of going through the process. When we first started, I remember our first test that we did. Um, the biggest I guess the biggest point of difference that we noticed was the importance of follow up. So um, that's something that hasn't really changed in terms of sites that are successful from a recruitment standpoint and those that are not as successful. I remember the first kind of pilot that we did with a site. It was basically just me, and I was kind of wearing multiple hats. And we did the ads on Facebook. And the study was a very difficult one because it was a COVID study, and they had to have been I think it was diagnosed, and they have to come in within, like, I think it was 4 to 5 days of diagnosis. And so for that first pilot, I was constantly on the phone, on the computer, and just responding to the leads that were coming in as they were coming in. And I remember that we got, like, within 3 or 4 weeks, like, 5, 6, 7 enrollments for a very difficult study. And I think those early lessons were important because it still kind of holds true even now. Like, our most successful sites, we talk about AI, we talk about technology, and all those things, and there's definitely a room for all of that, and a role for all of that. But I think at the end of the day, there's nothing that can replace human involvement, site owner involvement, or site staff involvement. And so the ones, even today, the sites that are following up with the leads, within an hour, within 10 minutes is even better. Same day. tend to do much better than the ones that are following up, the ones that are not following up, number one, or, following up kind of when they get to it and kind of treating it like a, you know, for whatever reason, that, okay, they might be busy with other things. They might not have a dedicated person to do the follow up. And we've seen this working with sponsors, and we've seen this working with sites as well. As I mentioned before, we did a pilot with a smaller sponsor, and we were basically, between myself and my contact at the sponsor, we were doing, because it was a pilot and a very small one, we were kind of doing the follow up, and that it blew everything away that sponsor had done before. Not only because patient ace, we know what works, we know what doesn't work, having worked with so many sites and different indications, but the follow up was just on point. And I got to give
Mm.
credit to the sponsor that they were, following up multiple times, and they just got it done. So anytime that the management and ownership is involved, and following up, no technology can beat that. Everything else that we have is kind of a substitute, and
Yeah,
ways to kind of mitigate that, but ultimately it's about that follow up.
I know that, and we've hired with Patient Ace, we've hired a former coordinator, or
Mm,
she's our customer success manager, Alexis Reese. She's been featured on Guru Nation before, but she actually understands what the coordinators are going through, and a lot of times, I was telling Alexis before the show, it's not, it's we've done best when it was either like you said, the owner
mm,
is responding to leads, which is not scalable, but early on, that's what I was doing.
sure.
Or you have a coordinator with only one study that does
Mm,
well. Or if you're like Yuma Clinical Trials now, you hire a dedicated admin. And we just onboarded an admin who's doing this stuff now, Fernanda, and it's working a lot better because
mm,
the problem is when the sites get busy, the coordinators also have thousand other things
yeah,
they need to be
Yeah.
doing.
100%.
And this just becomes another task that they're not necessarily enthusiastic. And plus, it's like it's not easy to talk to a patient, answer objections literally every hour, like over
Yeah,
and
and
over again.
I definitely wouldn't blame coordinators or anyone else, because it was funny. The sponsor that we were working with, they kind of came to the same conclusion. Like, you know, it would be worth it just to pay somebody $20 an hour just to do this, and it would be well worth it because of the return, um, on that investment. Coordinators, being a coordinator is tough enough, right? Like, they have so many things to do, and then on top of that, we add patient recruitment. It's a lot to ask, and might be very difficult to make it work. So I think one thing that we will continue to look into as we grow, we often get asked, like, do you have some sort of service that does, like a call center that can, follow up
Like
and,
a turnkey solution.
exactly, yeah, and that's
Yeah.
something we have in the back of our minds, and
Yeah.
we've piloted that, but
Not
I
every
think there's,
site will hire an admin, and not every like I have Fernanda do other things. I mean, she has potential to be a coordinator.
yeah,
So ultimately, it's like a revolving door. That
yeah,
admin role, if you're hiring well, that admin role is a revolving door for
mm,
newer people because ideally they graduate to coordinator.
yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
but if let's say they don't progress, because not everyone will,
Hmm.
you can have them do other things, right? We have them
Sure.
do like the social media stuff. We have them do some reaching out for sponsors. So there is some ROI in for the site hiring this person, but I can imagine a whole bunch of sites would be interested in that. Just
Yeah.
turnkey, Ronick, patient ace, just handle it for me. This is just clearly a lever we want to pull when we need to.
Yeah, and we've actually seen some very early success with. I know I said AI is not a replacement, but I've been surprised at the early results of using AI for follow up.
Mm,
People are willing to spend 3, 5, 7 minutes to go through a questionnaire and answer questions, and uh, become pre-qualified or pre-disqualified if that's the case. And that just saves, think of all the time that's saved from not having to pursue leads that are just not qualified. And
right.
as a consumer, I would appreciate that too, because early on, my early experiences as a secret shopper, when I was calling sites, like we had a lot of back and forth. I spent a lot of time, a lot of hours going to sites only to learn that I was just not qualified. And I think there's something to be said for, saving time for the patient who, doesn't have to spend time, go to the site, and only to get turned away, because that's a negative customer experience.
Hmm.
And so I think the follow up, the fact that it's seamless, the fact that it's immediate, and some people don't like talking to human beings. Some people prefer to talk to a bot, and if especially if it's something sensitive, might be a sensitive indication, or whatever. But it a chatbot, if you're browsing Facebook at 11 o'clock at night, and you see an ad for a study, and you click on it, um, there's no other option. Your only other option is to wait for somebody to call you back, or you
Hmm.
could just go through the qualification right then and there. So it's kind of instant gratification in a way,
Right.
like the Amazon model, where
Well,
you
when people are
find out.
online,
Yeah, well, you
they
find
want
out right
something
away
done now.
that, hey, you're qualified, or hey, you're not qualified. And I think I would have, thinking back to my initial experiences, like during COVID time and whatnot, I think that would have saved a lot of time for sites, as well as for patients. And at the end of the day, if they don't want that, they still have the option of talking to a live person. So
Yeah.
it kind of hits both worlds.
And Alexis, I think what I like about what we're doing is we're actually listening to the frontline workers. Like
Mhm.
all the other companies say that they do, but like literally Alexis, Ronick, you guys onboard like the admins, the coordinators. It's very rare it's the owners, I would assume, but maybe. Um but and then we take the feedback from the ones who are actually doing the work. Like they're the ones
Yeah.
Yeah.
who have the best feedback because they're the they're the ones in the trenches. So what are some of the feedbacks? I know my newest admin had some suggestions about, like, she said it was, for lack of a better word, could be a little bit sketchy for someone to click on a link,
Mm,
um, to kind of counter your point about
sure.
instant gratification. Like everyone's different, and I told her, listen, we want your take on it because not everyone's the same. Like not every persona online thinks and behaves the same way. Like it's valid, um, whatever suggestions you have. So, what are some of the feedbacks that we've been getting from the frontline workers at sites, and I guess what works well and what doesn't? Alexis, former coordinator yourself.
Yeah. So, yeah, to speak on that, first, as Dan mentioned, I have been at the site level, started as a recruiter, kind of like an admin role just to get the experience. And it's like you guys are both saying, it's like it's nice when you have a dedicated person because there's no juggling of, okay, who's going to follow up with this lead, because if there's not someone that's dedicated, it's kind of like sometimes what happens is the coordinator is kind of waiting on the other person, like, oh, is this person going to do it or do I need to do it? So it's nice when you have someone that's dedicated, to be able to follow up. The great thing that we've been doing is we've been getting feedback, like you mentioned, Dan, from sites, as things are happening. So like feedback is always encouraged, and we're always trying to, shape and mold the best practice or the best way for each site. um, I know some of our sites really do like that we can send like Ronick was mentioning, a automated message that says, hey, we appreciate your interest for the study. Go ahead and click the link to schedule a time to talk with us. That's good because they're automatically scheduling a time in their calendar to say, okay, this is the time that I'm going to meet with the site. Because from experience, what happens a lot is when you're calling these patients, the next day, like let's say they're clicking on the link at like 10 o'clock at night, right? If they have the chat bot available, they instantly receive that gratification, right?
Hmm.
Or if they're, scheduling on their calendar, they're saying, okay, I'm going to set aside time because people are busy, right? And they forget that they even sometimes click the link, right? They're just scrolling through Facebook or Instagram, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I'm not even interested anymore, or I don't even remember that I clicked that. So having, some of our sites really like having that time to schedule on a calendar just for an information call. And then we do have feedback from other sites where they're like, no, we want to do the contact first. We want to reach out ourselves. And some sites prefer that as well. So it's a mixed bag, depending on the site, what they're seeing and their experience. And that's the great thing about, us receiving the feedback constantly from sites is that we're able to shape it based on the site's needs for what they're experiencing. It's not just like a set in stone, this is how it goes, right? Because we want to make sure that things are benefiting the sites on the ground level. We don't want to make things more complicated for the sites because things can be complicated enough, and recruitment's hard, right? It's hard. I mean, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy. So we want to try to streamline that as best as we can.
Yeah,
Ronick,
I would.
anything?
Yeah, I would add to that a couple of things that I've been surprised at, pleasantly surprised. I would say. So you hear all these things about, oh, there's, every study has like 2 dozen vendors, and then there's training and there's certification, and then there's this and that. And my initial thought was that we would have similar pushback from sites like, oh, okay, not another vendor, not another portal, not another whatever. In addition to the other 30 that we already have to deal with for each study, I've been pleasantly surprised at how quickly um, users and just people at the site level pick up on how to use the patient ace and the portal. And I and Alexis, you can probably speak more to this because you deal more with the day to day at the site level. But most of the feedback we've gotten has been like, oh, okay, you know we do a quick call, 15, 20, 30 minute onboarding, and that's everyone's off to the races after that, and it just kind of flows. And so that's kind of been a nice, I've been happy to hear that feedback because you hear about the nightmare of technology, and we don't have a quote unquote training or certification program that you have to go to. It's kind of, Alexis gets on a video call with staff members, and I'm there sometimes, and we kind of set everything up, and there's 2 or 3 major things to cover. And I've been pleasantly surprised not only at how quickly sites have picked up, but how sometimes we don't, there's a lot of features and we don't necessarily go through every little one. But it's cool how sometimes they will just pick it up just based on a natural flow that's in the platform already. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, to mention your earlier point, is that we are not our target market. So whenever somebody thinks from the perspective of, oh, well, if I got a text, I wouldn't like it, or if I got a link, I wouldn't click it, I would think it's shady or whatever it is. um, that's common to think in those terms. Ultimately, the data will kind of show the reality, and it will play out. And we have like I believe it's like a 30% uptake on those links for scheduling calls, or for the chatbots it's actually even higher. But our sample size is still very limited, so we'll see how that plays out. But and there's always an alternate where you don't have to click the link. You can just wait, and hopefully somebody from the site will call you.
Yeah.
So
Hopefully.
it's yeah, that's the key. But when it comes to these things, we have to kind of um, step away from the perspective of, oh, I'm my lead or my client or my patient is going to think the same way I do, because that's not the case.
Right. Yeah. And it's I know as somebody who replies to patient leads, still to this day, although not, I'm like the backup now at the
Yeah,
site, but it's, you have to be in a certain mindset to want to engage with a patient,
yeah,
and
100%, 100%.
nobody wants to
Yeah,
go through the education process over and over and over every time. Like, they ask questions. What is a clinical trial? I mean, they ask the very basics.
mm.
So one of the things we've done as a site that I think other sites might want to do is best practices. We made a video tour of our site, and it's
Oh,
like
you know
it
what? I
features.
I want to incorporate that into your patient ACE flow, because I think
Yeah,
we
yeah.
had
Well, we've
talked
been
about that
manually
earlier.
doing it here and there,
You
like
have been, okay.
When they remember. The problem
Yeah,
is
but
if
I
they
mean,
don't remember.
it might not be a bad idea that,
Hmm.
if it's a new contact, that we can, hey, here's an introduction to our site, and just
Yeah,
have a YouTube link
yeah.
on there. And
Because
YouTube is a
that,
known entity. It's not like oh, what is this weird link? It's YouTube,
yes,
right?
that
Um,
little video alone, it's like 15 minutes. I doubt any
that's
patient
long.
watches the whole thing. Yeah, but it starts out like, this is our tour, this is Katie, and then she'll like walk through
Uh-huh.
our clinic, and then I take over halfway through
Oh, cool.
to
Okay.
walk through the other clinics that we have. So like
Send me
I've
the
had
link. We'll
patients.
implement this right away. This will be
I
implemented
will.
today.
Thank you. Thank you. I've had patients tell me, yeah, if it wasn't for that video, like it did seem sketched, but when I actually saw the video, I saw they were real.
Yeah.
And then when I came here, I saw the same building.
Yeah.
So it does something to reduce the friction. And then when they're on our website, they see our other podcasts. Like we have community
Yeah.
podcasts with the coffee shop owner or the nail salon. So
Mhm.
it makes us seem more legitimate as
Yeah, for
opposed to
sure.
Yeah.
just who's advertising at 3 in the morning for depression. It's like it is a little sketch. I gotta admit. But so that's one best practice we've done, and I'm
Yeah,
sure there's
we can
others out
even
there.
have that as like the once they submit a form, that could be like the YouTube comes up right
Hmm.
away. Um, it would be nice to test both and kind of see.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Mm.
after this is over, send me the link,
Okay.
and we'll get it in there.
And if sites
Um,
need to do that, they can hire Daniel. We can hook them up. Patient Ace is a full-on white glove service. Unbelievable.
I mean,
What
the
other?
other thing, I know we kind of talked about like the inefficiencies and like the importance of follow up, but like I said, sometimes it's not the fault of like whoever's at the site level, because um, not only are they doing so many things, they just like one of the things that we try to emphasize is you can't just call once and then kind of be
Mhm,
done with it. You have to follow up multiple times,
mhm.
and sometimes 3 4 times before they even respond, or before you can say that okay, this is a non-responder. But from a site's perspective, how do you keep track of all that? Like, typically it's like, okay, there's a spreadsheet, maybe a Google Doc or a Google Sheet, and then one coordinator is, managing multiple studies, and so are they like switching back and forth between these spreadsheets, or is it on like a post-it note somewhere, or is it just like, many sites are probably just like they try once, like okay, that's it, and that's kind of it's a wasted lead, because some of those would turn into potential patients and potential enrollees. But it's hard to keep track of all that. So one of the
Mm.
things, the patient ACE wasn't like this in the beginning, but as we kind of learned and heard from sites, we have kind of moved our flow and shifted it to what we call opportunities, where you can see all of the leads for all your studies, and at a glance, like if the site coordinator wants to know, okay, how are we doing in our COPD study? Um, Everybody can look at it and see, okay, we have X amount of leads, and here's a status. 20 of those leads we've tried once, 30 of those leads we've tried 2 times, and then 40 leads they're disqualified, and 10 have been enrolled, or whatever the case is. Um, just being able to see that, right? Like the availability of that information. Um, I think Patient Ace kind of brings it to the forefront instead of being buried in spreadsheets that you have to
Right.
click on and
Right.
ask. And so we also kind of think from the perspective of a coordinator, like from a site coordinator, that I want to know the status of all my studies, and I want to make sure that these leads are being followed up on. It's kind of at a glance you can see how long it's been since that lead has been touched, and
Mm-hmm.
so the ideal is everything says today, 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 or one day. But then when you start seeing like 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, that's when we get on the phone, or Alexis gets on the phone
Yeah.
and says, "Hey, we're seeing some of these leads are sitting there for days. Do you guys need any help? Is there any feedback?" And so I think bringing that information out from from spreadsheets and everywhere else, and centralizing that into one place, I think is very powerful, and that's been I think a game changer for us and for sites, because they can see at a glance, like, who are my A leads, who are my B leads,
Mm-hmm.
how many depression leads do I have, how many asthma leads do I have, what is the status, and just being able to keep all the notes centralized. um, it's a big game changer. The other thing is, we found this out. I mean, we kind of knew that this was the case, but it kind of just emphasized the point. Recently, I was we went to a national park, and we were kind of out of cell range for some time, and of course it was at that time one of the integrations. We have an integration with Creo, and there was a technical issue with that, and so as the leads were coming in, we normally send them straight to Creo if the site has Creo, and that eliminates the manual entry. But that stopped working. And the reason for that was just like, it was a minute reason. We just had to renew our credentials because they expire every year. So we just got that renewed. But basically, we only, it was emphasized when it broke that, sites came back to us and said, hey, now we have to like re-enter all this data manually. And we didn't like, we liked having to not do that because everything was just going straight into Creo. And so like the seamlessness of every click that you reduce, every keystroke that you reduce for a site, for a coordinator, it comes back tenfold
Every
in many
friction,
different ways. Yeah,
Yeah.
every
exactly.
friction you could reduce.
Yeah, and I know, like, kind of to go off of that too, I know when I first saw Patient Ace and like just the like opportunities, the flow, like Ronnie's talking about, I was honestly just amazed, like coming from the side and as a recruiter being like, wow, this is a great way to see all of your leads in one place, have that data right in front of you. There's no like switching between Creo and adding your notes and switching to your spreadsheet and like going multiple places. It's so redundant to have to go multiple places. If you're able just to do it in one, it saves you so much time. And it's very easy to grasp, like Ronik was mentioning. Like we had a client at a site who I scheduled her training call to get, onboarded into Patient Ace. I set up her account, and I think we had the training call that next day. And by the time I had the call, she was already making notes. She was already reaching out to leads. And so as we were going through it, she was like, oh yeah, like I already did that. And we're looking at it together. And I was like, wow, like she's like, yeah, it's really easy to understand. It's easy to pick up on. So even just that, like being able to grasp it so quickly, and be able to like have everything in one place. I mean, that's very powerful. And
Yes.
if you have multiple people, following up on your leads for multiple studies, it can get very disorganized very quickly because everybody's documentation is different, right, for what's going on. So to be able to have it all in one space is powerful for all of your studies. Is great.
Yeah, this is one thing I love about it as a site owner, and this is Ronek's also a site owner who created Patient Ace. So the site owners are in the very fabric and DNA of Patient Ace, but it's just another component of your tech stack, and especially like being able to automate the workflow. So the fact that we are a Creo partner, not too many vendors in the industry actually are. Like it's kind of rare air to be in the Creo partner program, but I think it's the biggest e-source platform out there, or at least one of the fastest growing ones. It automates, like this is the first time we have a recruitment vendor that's site focused. Yeah, we will work centrally with sponsors, but the site can work with Patient Ace regardless of what other portal your sponsors are using for your study, because it's part of your workflow, and it
Mhm.
actually makes sense to do it, and it's cost effective enough to where it makes sense for you to have this as a extra tech stack for your site. And that's what I
Yeah,
like about it.
yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Dan, and I think typically when sites are working with vendors, it's either like from a central campaign or from a sponsor standpoint. And I think Patient Ace is the difference is that we're very site focused, meaning sites might bring us on for a few studies that they have in mind, but um, sites can actually import all the leads that they have from other sources into Patient Ace, and kind of keep everything together in one, and they just pay their monthly fee for access to the platform, and kind of just have everything there. And so it just makes everything easier because it's not just we do the campaigns for whatever studies that you may have, but even for the ones where we're not doing marketing campaigns necessarily, you can still bring your leads into the ecosystem and kind of just manage that entire recruitment process. We had recently, we had done an integration for clients for some medical release. It was a medical release form. So after, what happens after they come on and they make an appointment, they have to have a medical release form. So, we did it for a couple of sites, and, another site recently came to us and said, well, we want that too. And Alexis, maybe you can talk a little bit about that. Um,
Yeah. So one of the biggest I know, like from recruitment, is like having to send the medical release, get it back signed. If you're doing it electronically, sometimes people, or especially, in older populations, they're like, I don't know where it went, or, can you help me with that? It can be a challenge, right? So we did have a client that said, hey, like, are y'all able to automate this process so that whenever we need to send a release, we can just move it from Patient Ace, like in another category, and it automatically emails out that form. Yep. We're able to set that up so that, for sites, it's just literally one drag over. It automatically sends out the release. It adds their name, their information automatically. All they have to do is read through it. They, DocuSign it, and then it gets sent back directly. And then it updates for the staff. It'll send the staff an email and say, this person sent back their medical release or this form, and that you're notified immediately. So that really helps streamline that process, just because the time it takes to have to send it through email and follow up, it just really made it a lot easier. And to be able to see as well, like, okay, I sent these releases to these patients. I'm still waiting on them. And here's the ones that I have signed back. That way, like what stage they're in. You're not having to dig through your email. It's automatically updated. So that was a big game changer for one of our sites.
Yeah, a lot of a lot more of those game changers, I think, coming up, especially you're on the customer success side when you notice sites are not following up quickly. I mean, that might be an opportunity to offer the site, a turnkey solution to doing that.
Mm,
As AI matures, like I said, the issue with a lot of sites, they get busy and nobody really wants to. You may not be in the right mindset as a
yep,
coordinator to switch into education mode for a random potential participant, especially when you know 8 out of 10 of them will say no, or you know, I don't qualify. It's hard to like just consistently be in that headspace to do it.
mm.
Whereas where I think this is the more we streamline it, the more that is an important criteria for the person doing that job.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Dan. In that, like, it's almost like a sales. You have to switch into a sales mode. When you're
Hmm.
talking to prospects that are, leads or prospects that are interested in a study, because um, most most of incoming calls today that are from like unknown numbers, like everyone assumes it's spam, right? And
Hmm.
like rightly so, because that's the world we
Yeah,
live
you
in
don't
today.
even pick up your phone anymore.
Yeah, so like everything is like going to voicemail, and so it's like, these like subtle rejections that you're getting, and then you multiply it by, like, all the leads that you have to call, multiple times, and like it's a different mindset from, like, what a coordinator does from day to day. So it's like a completely different job description, and so it is a lot to ask
Well,
to
especially all of these coordinators. You guys seen that meme? I just saw it yesterday on X. It's a Gen Z person looking at their phone ringing,
uh
and the meme says, "Me watching my phone ring and waiting for it to be over because I don't use my phone for that." And it's like a lot of these coordinators also are in that
Mm,
mindset of like, well, why do we have to call them? Like,
yeah.
let's just text. And I mean, they're not wrong. Like,
Yeah, I think definitely, like, there are a lot of people who would just like be very happy just being like, okay, let me just text back and forth. And that kind of reminds me of, like, we have a couple of sites where they're kind of thinking more, in marketing terms we call it top of funnel, where it's not specifically for a study, but maybe where they have an offer where, okay, come in for a free screening for whatever it is.
mhm.
And we have so many, like, I was surprised to see that people go through that process and show up to the site without having to, spoken to anybody, um, just because the offer is good, or they like what they're seeing, and they make an appointment. The appointment shows up on the site's calendar, Google Outlook, whatever it is, and then they show up, and they have a pretty high show up rate for someone that was just, like some random person off the internet. And I'm sure we can improve that with, some of the techniques that you mentioned, like having a YouTube video or something like that. But yeah, I mean, there are people that just prefer, this is, we live in a world where you can kind of do everything on your phone and without talking to a human being. And some people prefer that, so it's that's not surprising.
Yeah, and the coordinators on the other end kind of feeling the same burden and friction. So I like that
Yeah.
patient Ace understands this stuff and we're moving forward. For anyone coming to the Irvine meetup for SOS, I will be there. Chris Sauber, who's also one of the co-founders, co-owners. Another thing about Patient Ace, we never took private equity money, venture capital money. It's all bootstrapped
Hmm.
by site owners. So we can pass some of that savings off to the client, which is the benefit of working with non VC backed funds. We don't have investors to pay back first. We can pay it back to you guys in the form of lower cost or cooler features that maybe others can't do because it doesn't make financial sense. For us, it can. And so that's what I enjoy about being involved in this project, Ronick.
Yeah,
Thank you for
it's fun.
creating it, man.
It's fun because you get to, you get to kind of, you get feedback every day. You get to see what's going on in real time, and the fun part is actually making those adjustments, and kind of, it's, these are mini science experiments, right? So it's like, oh well,
Hmm.
let's try this. Let's see what happens if we do this, or let's try this. And um, I think that also relates to, like, from the site perspective, we recently spoke to a site. They're not a client yet, but they, we usually ask about, how sites do their recruiting currently, and sometimes they'll mention some vendors, and a lot of the times they're like, we're not really happy with XYZ vendor, or we're not happy with the lead volume, or whatever it is. And this particular site was like, they're actually doing well. We're happy with them, and we like what they're doing. And so my next natural question was, well, so what's the reason for kind of looking for a new solution? And I thought it was a really nice answer. They said that basically, we're always trying new vendors. Like, just because one vendor is doing well doesn't mean there can't be another vendor that might have a different,
Yeah,
approach to things. And so, I think those other vendors were sponsor provided, and this was kind of a direct site, um, a site owner looking for a solution that they could pay out of pocket and get reimbursed from the sponsor. Um, and I thought that was nice, because you don't always have the ability to do those type of experimentation. If you have a CTMS, you're probably not going to be trying two or three different CTMSs. But with recruitment, it's almost, you can have different vendors for different studies and different sponsors. And I think that mindset of just, experimentation, learning, growing, trying new things to see what works, that is the mark of a successful site,
yeah.
owner and manager.
Early adopters as well, and just giving the sites that control where, yeah, we are a recruitment vendor, but we're actually one started by site owners, and we
Yeah,
understand that the control that the site needs to put something as part of your workflow, not necessarily to just get more patients for a particular study and then you're done, but
right.
make this part of your foundation. And in order to get ahead and get more market share, I think
Sure.
that's the kind of client we're trying to attract. But uh, I want to thank you guys for coming on. We'll do a lot more of these
Yeah.
as
If anyone
we
has any questions, we're happy to answer them.
mhm, reach out to Ronick, Alexis, or if you're coming to Irvine, California this Saturday, it's not too late. I think it's hello@saveoursites.com if you want to get in. It's a secret location. We don't just give it the address away. We need make sure they're actually from sites.
Mm.
We're controlling the vendors that come and the non-site people. So we want to make it just mainly for sites. Email hello@saveoursites.com. And then for any questions on Patient Ace, if you see me there, I'll be there. If not, Alexis and Ronick, their LinkedIn is
Maybe we need to
underneath.
do a special. Anyone that signs up, like, from that event, we can do something special for them.
Ah, from Save Our Site. Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. Instagram, the questions were good. I got back to you guys in the DMs. And then LinkedIn and YouTube, thank you very much. Catch you guys later. Bye
All
bye.
right. Take care.
Thank you.